I just wanted to give up. I was downward spiraling fast, ready to quit. So for the next 18 months, I grinded with my goal in mind. And finally, a year and a half after my accident, it was time for me to take a shot at my dream. I showed up in Chicago to compete in the triathlon. I dove into Lake Michigan to swim the first mile. I got on my bike, rode 25 miles, put my shoes on, and ran 6.2 miles to the finish, crossing the finish line. I had done it. I had achieved my goal. And there was one more surprise in store for me that day. I hadn't just finished the race. I had won. First out of more than 4,000 other participants. The first thing I thought about were those months in the hospital, imagining what would have happened had my mom not forced me to look towards the future and set a measurable goal. Through this tragedy, I'd learned an invaluable lesson. I had learned that life will test us with setbacks, but these situations aren't permanent. We have full control of our choices to keep moving forwards one step at a time. I had learned that we all have reservoirs of untapped potential and can achieve great things. The biggest thing standing in our way? Our own minds. For the next 6 years, I competed as a professional triathlete in 25 countries. And then, in the fall of 2014, I found myself at the summit of Ecuador's third tallest mountain with a diamond ring in my pocket, asking my longtime girlfriend Jenna to marry me. I would attempt to set a world record for the Explorers Grand Slam with the larger purpose of inspiring kids everywhere to dream big, to set goals, to live active, healthy lives. We coined our project Beyond 7-2. Now, the Explorers Grand Slam includes climbing the 7 summits, which is the tallest mountain on each of the 7 continents, as well as completing expeditions to both the North and South Poles. Fewer than 50 people in history had ever completed the Grand Slam, and I would aim to be the fastest. It took over a year of hard work to put our dream into reality, but finally it was time for me to leave on the adventure. I set off for the mountains. First destination, Antarctica. A tiny little plane landed me onto the frozen continent. The landscape was desolate and surreal. It felt like standing inside the belly of a ping pong ball, white in all directions. And the cold was something I'd never experienced before. Average temperature, negative 40 degrees. It was so cold that I took a cup of boiling water and threw it into the air, and it immediately turned into ice. After battling these extreme conditions, for the next week, I arrived at the South Pole. And from there, the journey continued onwards. Next, I climbed Mount Vinson, then Aconcagua, then Kilimanjaro. And finally, after 100 days, I had completed 7 of the 9 expeditions to complete the Explorers Grand Slam, and I arrived at Mount Everest Base Camp. After 3 weeks on Mount Everest, I had slowly clawed my way up to the highest camp before the summit, Camp 4. The muscles in my legs felt like ice, cold and hard. My head was pounding, my eyes were bulging, my face was swollen. In any normal circumstance, this would warrant a trip to the doctors, but there were no doctors around. And besides, I knew exactly what was happening. I had read all the literature on Mount Everest, but nothing can truly prepare you for what is known as the death zone, above 26,000 feet, an altitude where the human body cannot survive for long. As darkness fell and the wind kicked up, I was exhausted and claustrophobic in my tent. I was scheduled to leave for the summit at midnight, and I was terrified. In the darkness, my headlamp only illuminated the few steps in front of me. Focus, one step at a time. I began counting my steps. 1, 2, 10 steps. Could have fooled me. Felt like 10 miles. I felt my body giving up. I was hopeful that the daylight might give me some strength after a long night of climbing, but the sunrise only illuminated the 2-mile drop-offs on either side of me. I was again being tested by the biggest obstacle of all, my mind. My mindset shifted, and my body forgot its weakness. I felt a surge of energy, each step taking me closer to the summit. And after a few more hours of hard work, I gazed out on the most magnificent view from the top of the world.